yesterday.
Okay.
And they were saying that Chase and Zach were giving him a lot of smack talk over the break. So
My youngest especially, he's the most devout Ohio State fan because he goes to school every day and he gets peppered with SEC stuff. So, and his own brothers are on Clemson, and he's crushing them. But you haven't played anybody, and you'll see. So if Ohio State loses, Ohio State players are going to be sad. Nobody is going to take it harder than Chase.
As far as being a broadcaster, there are a few games where you're pulled as hard both ways as this one for you. So how difficult is it? You've got your boys on one team, you're on the other team.
Oh, I'm sorry. Hey,
man,
how are you, man? For me, it's really not. It's like you guys have a job to do. It's really no different from me. I guess when you're doing your job and the ball's in the air and the guys are running plays, I'm not talented enough to be thinking about Ohio State and my kids. It takes every ounce of energy I have to analyze a game, to just watch the play and talk about what just happened. I feel like it's my job to help the viewer understand the hows and the whys of the game. Now, before the game, it's cool to sit here and talk about it. After the game, definitely to talk about it. But during that broadcast, it's no different than any other game. Just lock in and analyze the game.
So the Big Ten has not scored a point in the last 4 of these. Obviously, you won in 2 of them. Why is this going to be different?
I hate to kind of lump the whole conference together. It's like when we watch these bowl games. I was, again, my 7th graders kidding Jake and Ty about the ACC because Miami lost and they didn't score. And I don't know if you can really lump an entire conference and say, well, they're slow or they're not as physical or whatever it might be. I think in this case, Ohio State has proven all year to have an explosive offense, a quarterback that's playing incredibly well, and playmakers all around him with probably the most physical offensive line. I don't know, Tim, you've been around. Probably the more physical offensive line that I can remember seeing Ohio State in years. So we'll see what happens. I mean, they got to go out and play, but there's a lot there coming into this game to really like about the potential of this offense.
Do you think Justin Fields' knee is going to be an issue?
It's impossible to know if he gets tweaked. I think going into the game, I think he's going to play with a smaller brace. I don't think, like when I watched him against Wisconsin, I thought, man, he's not at 100%. I think after having 3 weeks to get recovered and treatment, I think he's going to go in there and play. I think he's going to have to, if Ohio State's going to be competitive, he's going to have to run the football. And I think he's a big factor, not just design run, zone read, but especially 3rd and 7, as he's done all year. Things break down and he takes off for a first down. That's a big part of who their identity is. So I think going in, it's okay, but we'll see what happens throughout the game.
Kurt, do you see a clear separation between the top 3 or 4 or 5 programs right now and everybody else? What's your take on that?
Well, I think there's Clemson and Alabama and Ohio State, and I think Georgia is coming. What Coach O's doing with LSU, you don't know if this is just a Joey Burrow year or if it's just where LSU is heading. I think Oklahoma with Lincoln Riley has them in a good spot. So I think those are the kind of the teams it seems like have elevated through recruiting and resources and facilities and players. And I think other teams are trying to catch up to them. But I think Ohio State's obviously among that group.
Yeah, you showed up at Ohio State in '88, at basically the lowest ebb in probably 60 years.
Yeah.
How far has it come in your mind to get back to this level?
Oh, it's incredible.
I
go back to what Jim Tressel created. I think when I went to Ohio State, if Ohio State went 8-3 and beat Michigan, that was a successful year. And Jim Tressel, I think, raised the bar in 2002 because the previous national championship was in '68. It was almost like a mythical thing to think about a national championship. It was all about Big Ten championship, and that was the era. Just like in the SEC, it was SEC championship. So things have changed a lot in this BCS era, and then of course the playoff era. It's opened up the floodgates to everybody chasing that dream. But I think Jim Tressel raised the bar and made it realistic, and that became the goal. It was no longer, hey, 9-3, they beat Michigan. It's now, hey, '02, they won the national championship. So I think that's why the expectations are real. And with the recruiting that they've maintained since '02, every year they have a shot to get there.
I know they're not going to be able to play your sons because of the redshirt rule, but have you just had one moment this week where you just kind of been able to step back as dad and go, it's pretty cool, my kids are going to be running out of the tunnel in the Fiesta Bowl?
Yeah. I mean, I'm so proud of them just for where they are. You know, they very easily could have gone to a smaller school, but growing up in my family, they travel with me all the time. They go to these kind of games. And so I think when they decided to do a preferred walk-on, they decided to go to a place like Clemson. Of course, I applauded them and whatever they wanted to do. And now that they're on this team, we kind of kidded when we first started. So one day maybe you're going to play Ohio State. And here they are as a redshirt freshman playing Ohio State. So it's somewhat surreal for them and for us as a family. But yeah, I think every day I do a pretty good job of stepping back, and had dinner with them last night. And as a family, it's very cool.
How do you think this matchup stacks up to some of the national championship games that you've seen, just in terms of talent across the board, complete teams going
I've
head
called so many games. You guys have covered so many big games over the years. Just the personnel on the field on both sides gets you really excited to want to see this match. It feels like a national championship when you look at the big playability of Clemson, the playmakers of Ohio State, the Justin Fields and Trevor Lawrence, the backs. I mean, ETN probably hasn't gotten the national exposure he deserves. And what J.K. Dobbins has done has been remarkable at Ohio State. The receivers, the secondary on both sides, of course, Chase Young and his ability to rush the passer. I mean, it's what you hope for when you get to this moment in the season, and we have it. Now you just kind of, as a broadcaster, as a guy doing the game, it's like, get us to the fourth quarter, let's have a great game that comes down to the wire, because on paper it has that kind of feel to it.
This is two great offenses, two great defenses. Do you see 24-23 or 41-40?
I think I'm always a guy that comes into these games thinking points. You know, I think a 38-34 kind of feel to it. I haven't looked at the over/under. I don't know what it is, but looking at the potential of the offenses, I'd be surprised if it were lower, like you said, at 24-21. I'd be surprised. Nothing against the defenses. These defenses have played well all year. I just have that much respect for the playmaking ability and the offense of both these teams.
With all the talent you mentioned, what position groups are you looking most forward to watching?
Well, I think a game within a game will be the Clemson wide receivers against the Ohio State secondary. I think that's going to be a fascinating matchup. I mean, T. Higgins and Justin Ross, their length, both of them around 6'5", long arms, and they're going up against Akuda, who's top 5 pick possibly, 6'1", long arms. Damon Arnett, who's a big physical corner, even though he has the broken hand, he's still been able to play with physicality. And Shaun Wade, who many Clemson fans probably aren't familiar with, he's probably a first rounder if he decides to come out this year. I mean, you think about all that talent going head-to-head and the style of defense that Ohio State plays. These guys are going to be on islands, and it's going to be who wins. So that, to me, is going to be fascinating to watch. And then the Chase Young factor in this game, how Clemson handles him. Do they think, hey, we're Clemson, we don't worry about guys like Chase Young, we're going to play him straight up? Or do they think, we're trying to play a man up, but you know what, we got to slide to him, or we got to chip with a back? Or how do they handle Chase Young and the potential of what he can do to disrupt an offense?
Kirk, obviously everybody knows how good the SEC has been, how good Clemson has been. We've seen teams like what Texas can be, what USC can be, what Florida State can be. Obviously, teams in the South, in the southern half of the country, that's where a lot of the power in college football is.
Yes, sir.
Do you think teams in the North, is it any harder for teams in the northern half of the country to win on a consistent basis? And do you think anybody other than Ohio State long term can compete for national titles from the northern part of the country?
I think they can. It's a fair question. I mean, it's just a facts. It's if you look at the teams in the top 10, if you look at the recruiting rankings every year, I mean, it tends to you see teams from the SEC, the ACC, the Pac-12. Ohio State's the outlier. You can maybe say Notre Dame has become an outlier. Michigan has recruiting, but it's not always necessarily showing up, on the field. I think it is tougher. I think just because of the abundance, if you go around and you travel into Atlanta, into Miami, into Southern California, into the state of Texas, and you just look at high school football talent, a lot of times they want to stay home. In some cases, they'll go to the north. So it puts a lot on Ohio State or a Michigan or Notre Dame or a Penn State to not only find the players in their region, but they got to go down into Atlanta. They got to go down into Texas. They got to do that in order to be able to play not only in their conference, but to play at an elite level. So it's tougher because you're talking guys into traveling further to leave home. But I don't think it's impossible. I think what Ohio State has built, I think what James Franklin is building at Penn State, Brian Kelly, I feel like he's close. Jim Harbaugh, they're winning 10 games, but I know they're not beating Ohio State, but they're still a talented team. It's more of a challenge for sure.
Herbie, how many teams really have a shot at this thing every year? Is it down to 6, 8, 10, or are there 20 teams to be perfect?
Yeah, I mean, Tim was just asking if 3 or 4 teams have elevated themselves from the rest of the pack. I think it's maybe in that 5 or 6 range for now. But 2 or 3 years ago, we might have said it's 2 teams or 3 teams. So I feel like the potential of it is growing. I feel like when the ceiling is high, it's up to you as another program to raise that bar up to try to match. I remember when Urban Meyer got to Columbus, and he made a very controversial comment about this conference has to recruit better. And everybody thought, hey, worry about your own team. They were very kind of insulted by his comment. And I think what he was trying to say is, hey, we, as a conference, we have to raise the bar. And I think that's true on a national level. If you want to be able to beat Alabama or Clemson or Ohio State, you can complain about it, or you can go out and recruit and try to bring in better players.
What has Ryan Day done to get the most out of his team, do you think?
I think Ryan Day has an ability to relate. I think Urban Meyer did it in his own way. You guys go to the facility, you've been around, it's different. Like Urban Meyer did it with psychology and pressure and just intensity. Ryan Day has intensity, but I think Ryan Day does it in his own way. I give him a lot of credit. You step into that shadow with Urban Meyer, who still comes over to the facility, still comes over to practice, and pretty much the infrastructure is there, and you have to try to you can't be Urban Meyer, you have to be Ryan Day. And Urban Meyer's a legend. He's an icon in this industry. And I'm really impressed, not just